Sovol 3D sent me out one of their latest printers, the SV03. This is an FDM printer, requires a small amount of assembly, but can be tackled in a matter of about 30 minutes to an hour. One of the things I don't really like about FDM 3D printers lately is that most of them have started to come out with a glass print bed. Now I myself have a lot of trouble usually with the stuff sticking to it and ruining the print. This can be fixed with a bit of glue, and I like to use this Elmer's glue for it. But most of the time the companies recommend specific settings. I've tried a lot of those, but they simply don't really work all that well for me. So I just add a little bit of glue and that fixes it. Now the printer straight out of the packaging is mostly assembled. As I said before, it needs a little bit of assembly, and usually a lot of these nuts, bolts, and other things all around the printer need actual tightening. One of the things that I encountered with this one is that everything was already nice, tight, pretty level, and didn't really need all that much attention all around, and that is pretty impressive, specifically at the price points. I have had printers more expensive or at the same price point which needed a lot more work before it was actually workable. Now besides the glass print bed, I'm also not really fond of this filament runout sensor. It is a safety feature which does or should save your prints from failing, but I simply don't really like the location that it is in. It puts a lot of tension on the actual filament from the extruder to the roll, and therefore can snap the filament in half. Don't ask me how I know. So I simply just disconnected it and ran alongside of it, not using it. But that is all up to you. I simply don't prefer the real placement that it is in. So usually when these printers come out of the packaging, they need a lot of adjustment, and with the wheels or knobs underneath the bed, you can level the print bed itself. On this one, it wasn't really required, but just going through it quickly by hand before you start any of the actual functions on the machine itself is a good thing to do. Just a bit of a safety feature and making sure that it is roughly level. And then the rest of the leveling can be done by the printer itself with the BL Touch that is already pre-installed. For some of you that aren't aware what a BL Touch is, it's basically an automated leveling system for this print bed. So it makes it a lot easier to get smoother prints and have the print bed nicely leveled. So after going through all of those steps and having it automatically leveled, I started the test print that was on the SD card included with the printer, and quickly realized that I have no idea what this actual file is, but it did show me that the bed has leveled out nicely and the filament is laying down super smooth and doesn't really need any more touching or changing. So I just left that for what it is, canceled that print, and started to print some of my own parts. So with the actual size of this printer being quite large, a 35 by 35 centimeters and a height of 40 centimeters, it also takes a lot of time for the actual print bed itself to reach the final heat that it needs to be before you start printing. Now with normal printers that I've used so far, they are slightly smaller, so that doesn't really take as much time. But in this case, I do want to mention that before it was actually hot enough for the print bed, it took about 6 to 7 minutes, and then the nozzle still needed to warm up. And eventually, after all of that was said and done, it started printing, or at least it started with the automated leveling again before it actually started printing. It does this every single print before it starts, and it takes quite a lot of time. So for the actual print to start, we were about 11 to 12 minutes from the actual starting point when turning it on. So the auto leveling before every print starts is written into the code of the machine, so you could probably write that out. I'm not that skilled when it comes to code writing, so I'm just leaving that for what it is. And I think it is a bit too much, and a printer shouldn't need leveling every single print. But that is up to you. If you are handy enough with the code, you could probably just write it out. One of the other things that is written in that code for every print starts is a small squirt out of the machine, just pushing some of the filaments through before it starts on the print, making sure that it is actually loaded fully and that the print starts properly with the filament already there. And that is one of the nicer things on this one. So with the print now finished, we can start comparing them and seeing how they actually look. So if you've seen any of my 3D printer reviews so far, you know that I like to pick a subject. And this time around, since most of the world has probably seen this show already, I chose to go for Squid Game. I was really excited about some of the props, and I mentioned to find a lot of them on Thingiverse, free to download, and then simply just print them out to have around. These are a couple of coasters from a specific episode in the actual series. If you know what I'm talking about, you'll probably really like these as well. Now they printed out really nice and flat, but the filament that I used does show a bit of the path that the actual printer took. Overall, it took the shape nicely and no real inconsistencies, and only left a super nice and smooth finish for FDM printers. Now that of course is all good and well, but a bit small for a printer with this capacity of print size, so I decided to level it up a bit. In the show they use a variety of super cool masks, and again I found some files on Thingiverse and started printing them. Some of them were a bit more complicated than others, but most of them were just printed straight on the print bed and needed no supports whatsoever. This one did not need any supports. It printed straight on the print bed, stuck down really nicely, and left a really weird finish, to be honest. It is not really as level as I'd like it to be on some of the flatter surfaces, and I don't really know why it did this, because with some of the other prints that I'm going to show right here, they are a lot smoother. Now there are some rougher edges around this one, but that probably is in the actual file that I used and not on the printer, because as you could see earlier, it is perfectly capable of printing nice round surfaces, and this one here is a bit not as smooth and more pixelated, so to call, and these ones are perfectly round, so I know that the printer is capable of doing it. Now somehow in these files I'm guessing it didn't really come out all that nice, but overall the actual finish on most of the pieces here is super smooth and quite impressive for this size and price point of a printer. So I'm really happy with the way that this thing is turning out, and it is even somewhat functional. It is a bit of a rougher fit and finish, but overall if you'd smooth that out, it is actually a collapsible mask like it is in the TV show. Without changing any of the settings, I just moved on to the third and final mask, and that is the waiter mask. Now this one is a lot smoother than the other two are. It has a super nice silky smooth finish. It does have a couple of inconsistencies here and there, but nothing to mention really. It should be sandable really easily and leave a nice smooth finish, but as you can see straight off of the printer, it is already very nice. So that is also why I'm really confused as to why the other masks aren't really as smooth as this one, as they have been printed out with the same settings and the same filament as well. Some of the edges around the eyes and also on some of the parts of the leaf are not really as perfect and smooth as the rest, along with the top section, as I printed it upside down, and that is where the supports mounted. But after a little bit of cleanup, they just cleaned up really nice and smooth. As you can see here, they do need a little bit more refinement, but overall it came out really well. I hope you guys enjoyed this review on the printer, and if you are excited about it, I will be leaving links in the description down below.